Here we go. Here we go. Officially live. 7 o'clock sharp. Okay. Wait for a few guys to tune in here. And then we will be welcoming Robby Clark on here tonight. Robby Clark is an absolute beast in the business space, the real estate space, investing. If you don't follow him, you should be, because this guy's dropping a lot of free content that is valuable. And oh, there he is right now. All right, so I'm gonna welcome Robby in, and I advise you guys later to ask some questions related to business, because I think that's his specialty. We can talk personal finance and investing anytime. I think this is the best chance to ask some business. Bring him in here now. There he is. Robby, what's going on?
Hey man, how you doing? You gotta let me know if the music is a little too loud and I'll go somewhere else. It's I can't hear it on my earphones, but it might come through. But how you doing, man?
Doing well. I can hear the music, but it's quiet. It's pretty quiet.
Okay,
You're obviously tuning in from the pool there at the wing.
Yeah. It'll add a little bit to this. That'll be good.
Must be nice. Yeah, it's actually just getting dark over here, so making me jealous. What did I do wrong here?
Yeah, we got another hour here, so we're good. But yeah.
Nice. Cool, man. Yeah,
thank you for having me.
What's that?
I said thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, man. I've been seeing that you're just like kind of all over the place down there, traveling the U.S. It seems like you stayed there for a few months, just kind of living the dream, staying at the Wynn Hotel. What have you been doing for the past few months?
Yeah, man. No, I've been out here for about 3-4 months, but I'm actually I was initially born in the States, so it's and spent some time in LA. So I've not been at the Wynn for 3 to 4 months. We were out here this week with a few friends, and Ryan, my business partner and president as well, to just enjoying the fights, the UFC fights this weekend. So it's one of my side passions outside of business is everything related to mixed martial arts and UFC. So just out here for the event, having a good time, and fortunately, I'm able to work remotely and have been for a long time. I've always kind of set things up that way. So it's been, pretty much just that. I've been business as usual out here, just, enjoying getting out a little bit. Because like most people, we were in lockdown for quite a long time. And I was back in Canada for a while. So I've been meeting up with some old friends and getting involved in some different business talks, and then continuing to push on with the developments.
Yeah, it's pretty badass that you're down there. Kind of, I can see that like the UFC is a huge part of your life, and you're kind of managing these businesses from down there. Your businesses are all in Canada, is that right?
Correct. Yeah, I've got one new one that's in the works down here. That it's going to be fun, but it's already operating as well too. So my focus is fully on SID developments, and the rest of my companies are all in Canada. Correct.
Yeah, man, like that. I see what you're doing, like with SID developments in Canada and stuff like that, and kind of wanted to drill down on that a little bit. Seems like that's the main business that you have, and like, what does that look like? What kind of properties are you buying, and like, what's your segment in real estate?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I've been investing in real estate now for like 9-10 years. So of course, we've got the meal prep company, Eat Fresh Meals. I've got the landscaping company, but my focus the past 5-6 years, I want to say now, has been on the real estate side, and for a multiple of reasons. I feel like, truthfully, it adds the most value to society from my point and what we're doing. I understand. It's becoming more public now, but I understood the demand for housing years ago, and that's always been my thing since getting in. I'm like, we have supply issues. We've had supply issues for over a decade and much longer. It's just not really been realized and come to the forefront. So I knew going to these other communities at first, ones that I can afford, because I couldn't buy things in Toronto anyways, but going to communities I could cash flow and adding value and investing in there was going to, it was going to work out once I figured it out. And like anything, like, it's a topic, it's a business, you get better over time. So you make a lot of mistakes when you're first starting. And when you persevere through those, then you can, learn the correct ways to make things grow, make things scale. And that's, really the journey I've been on. And that's where we're at. In terms of, properties and acquisitions right now, we purchase on average about 10 properties a week, but we're able to do that now because we built out teams to kind of support that infrastructure, and we treat it like a business. We don't treat it like a passive investment. So I'm a huge fan of people investing passively into real estate, and I give a lot of advice on how to do that. But for us personally, it's a full-time business that requires a lot of work, and that's where I keep my focus. And in terms of where we're buying right now, it's predominantly Northern Ontario. So 95% of our purchases right now are in Northern Ontario. Again, that's because supply and demand factors, but also it's a market that could really use investment capital, and you're seeing a lot of it go out there, which is really helping the economy. It's like the transaction volumes in most of the cities that we've invested in is doubled year over year, and it's just a significant boost to the economy there in general. Because you can think from a macro sense, if there's 30 million in transactions a month, let's say in Sault Ste. Marie. Well, the following year there's 60 million a month. The amount of people who are getting paid from this, from real estate agents to appraisers to brokers, it's really making a huge systemic impact on that city that's been in kind of like a depressed lull for the better part of 3 decades, really. And that's what's needed, really, to keep all cities and towns sustainable, and make sure the homeowners aren't losing out to the tenants, or they wouldn't be better off investing in basically any other asset class. Because when you have a flat market and you have homeowners, that's when for personal homeowners, not landlords, that's when they really lose. You can't have a completely flat market for decades, otherwise it's cheaper to rent a property.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach that you have, like your business model. I've kind of got like the gist of it. I mean, you're kind of like making big improvements to areas and cities overall to raise the price of the average home up to at least the build price, to encourage development in these towns and cities that have not had development money poured into them for so long. And is that, like, are you seeing that already take effect? Like, I know one of my favorite markets is Sudbury, and I think you invest in Sudbury, and that's already exploded. Is that the same for those other ones like Sault Ste. Marie and Timmins?
Yeah, correct. I mean, I'm big also in commodity metals as well too. I really like what I think is gonna, there's a lot of things I focus on, and it's mainly what's gonna happen in the future, not the day-to-day trends and things like that. But I know, in the world that we're moving into, renewables are going to be huge, and we have a tremendous amount of commodity metals in Northern Ontario, which is going to support the renewable movement. So that's one of the factors there. And in a utopic world, I mean, my philosophy is, in a utopic world, homes would be in every city just over the price of build. They wouldn't go too far up like New York or Toronto, and that's going to happen just simply because of supply and demand. It's going to happen naturally. There is no utopic world, but utopia, I should say, in that sense. But if you have them just over the price of build, then developers can go in there and afford to build new homes and make a safe margin, if you will, right? When you go to places like Toronto and stuff, and I don't think Toronto's going to go down. I don't invest in Toronto, but I still think, there's a lot of, bullish sentiment in Canada in general, whether it's foreign investments, whether it's, population, whether it's having the lowest vacancy of any G7 country. There's so many bullish factors. I often say if every country was a dividend, I'd invest all my money in Canada. I mean, we have the second most natural resources. First, if you don't include oil. Second, with oil, we've got 50% of the freshwater lakes. Like, it's an unbelievable country, and second largest landmass and 39th in population. So we've got a lot of building to do and a lot of people that are going to be immigrating. But when you keep things just over the cost to build, it allows for new development, and it allows, more importantly, homeowners who are told to buy homes from the government to invest back into their home, whether it be for a new kitchen, a new deck. Because what you see often in the cities like this is that, when they bought their home for $150,000 in the 90s, they had, everything was good. And now they need a new deck. Well, a deck in the 90s would have cost you $2,500 or, a few $1,000s in the early 90s. And now it's $20,000. So they can't afford to do that because they've had no appreciation on their homes. So that's what leads to, properties being dilapidated and not taken care of. And listen, if you look at Sudbury, the median income is actually higher than St. Catharines. So it's not actually the income that's the biggest determining factor. Real estate is, because that's the middle class wealth generator. It's one of the largest markets in the entire world, $10 trillion market, over 10 trillion just in Canada. So that is the deciding factor on whether an economy is, like, a city is middle class or not. Of course, you can go way over the price of build, but I don't think you're doing as much good for the economy if you're, making a $2 million home, a $4 million home. There's only a small segment of the population that can actually afford that. Whereas when you're going to these other areas, it's a big difference. And that's the thing. People are like, oh, well, you need affordable housing. You absolutely do. And listen, if materials were cheaper, then cool, homes can be cheaper as well too. But at the end of the day, to have a sustainable, if you're going to have people buy homes and say that it's a good investment, in order for it to be sustainable, they need to remain at around slightly above the cost to build. And that's what a perfect scenario is. So by the time the markets kind of get there and developers are there, I'm likely looking for other cities to invest in to do the same thing to help out. And it's not me doing this independently by any means. There's I'm a fraction of the purchases, obviously. It's just I see that in the long trend, and whether people are jumping on that or or it happens over time. These cities where you have high cap rate, low vacancy cities, should be an anomaly, and inevitably they're going to go up. It's like an undervalued stock. It's value investing.
Yeah, man. You mentioned like a lot of interesting points there for real estate and for why you're doing what you're doing. What about like the whole work from home trend, like the people potentially moving? Do you think that plays into the home prices and kind of going higher in some areas and lower in others, or it's not big enough?
No, I think it is a big factor. And it's funny because I've always tried to operate remotely. And then we bought an office like at the end of 2019. We used it for 7 or 8 months. And then we had the lockdown. So we've had it and not used it again for since then, essentially. But I think it's a huge factor. And I think it's also escalated the efficiency of things like that too, right? Because a lot of times people didn't need to be in the office for everything. And if you look at the amount of time wasted in travel just to get to and from work, it's a big deal. So that's definitely been a factor. And then I think, during this transition, it kind of fast forward things. So if you look at you're ready for retirement in a couple of years and something like this happened with the pandemic, and then your home appreciated 20% year over year in Toronto. Well, okay, I'm going to retire a couple of years early then, and then I'm going to take this capital and go a little further north, or maybe I'm going to go to Brantford from Toronto, or maybe I'll go to Nag, or maybe I'll go all the way out to Sudbury and get 4 times the amount, for my money out there. And for sure, that's done is drive more people there. Another big factor is the fact that we've increased immigration again to over 400,000 citizens a year, and we're not even building, half that amount. So there's only so many places you can put people. And if you look at, I think Ontario is at 3.2% vacancy right now, all of Ontario. And that doesn't include people on waiting lists for subsidized housing. So really, it's probably under 2% when you consider homes that can't be lived in, or the waiting list for rental housing. So you take that nationwide. I believe there's about maybe 500,000-600,000 vacant units, and we're bringing in 400,000 people a year, probably another 100,000 illegal immigrants as well too, because that's just a natural effect. And you're building 200,000 units a year. So, and then everything that every party, every politician, all they're doing with the coming regulation changes and what they want to do are all bullish for investors and property owners as well too. They're actually really hyping up demand when really we have it's supply that we need. We don't need more demand. We have tons of demand. We need more supply. And you need new developers online, because if you go to the Matamis, the guys that are doing big in GTA, they're not going to double or triple their production overnight. Not going to happen. They don't need to. They're already balling out of control. They've been doing this forever, and they've got their sites planned for the next 5-10 years. You need new developers that never existed before getting into these markets that have a chance. Because the truth is, new developers can't compete with the big guys in the GTA. They know exactly what their build costs are, or they know they're much more dialed in than somebody new trying to start out. That's why you see even some of the new developers struggle in the GTA sometimes, even in a great market, because they've overpaid for land, they've overpaid for construction, whatever it might be. And these guys are dialed in. So you need new developers to come on that don't have that competition and can start in these new cities to create more supply.
Yeah. And that's where you come in, and that's where you kind of help to fill that gap, right?
Well, yeah. So what we did, like I like to say, we're the fluffers, right? Like, we're going in there and taking the existing inventory and making it better, because you got to start with that. And then it's new developers. Yeah. Like, we're not doing like a lot of builds from scratch and everything. It's mostly existing inventory and making sure that we can re-rent that out. So making good use of the existing inventory, whether that's adding units or just making it livable again. Whereas then what we really need too on top of that is you need more supply. So it's new developers coming on and being like, hey, here's a 50 single family home divisions and different things like that to really step it up. I think that's what it needs. So once these other cities get to that place, we're going to be able to increase supply a lot. Because I'll tell you right now, if we were building 500, and mark my words, we were building 500,000 units a year right now, we'd be bringing in 1 million immigrants a year. The government has no, uh, uh, there's no way they're going back on what they want to do with immigration. If anything, they would increase it. And they know they simply can't, because you would have people living on the streets if you immigrated faster than they already are.
Yeah, that's bold. That's an interesting point. Now, you mentioned like real estate being a business as opposed to an investment. And I agree with that, depending mostly on what strategy that you're using. And I know that you're kind of in the space of like turning single family homes into duplexes, creating more units. Obviously, that's an active business. But do you think for the regular real estate investor, first, second, third property, they should treat it like a business or treat it like an investment?
When they're investing in like their first, and they have another job as well too. Yeah, no, for those, I actually just did a video on that today too. If you're doing like, trying to invest passively, your power team is pretty simple. You need a really good agent in the city who deals with investors. Like, hey, do you deal with investors? What do you know? Try to find one good agent that can work with you in that city. And then look for the best property management company in that city, where you just simply Google top property managers. You call them. If you get a good feel for one, go with that one, or get them all to send you the contracts, read them. If you like one more than the others, go with them. If you don't understand the contract, send it to your real estate lawyer, who'll probably read it for free and be like, hey, does this sound, or a friend or anybody. And then the third thing you need is a good inspector and a contractor, so that when you're buying a home, you can make sure it's not just a shit show. So I always recommend just dabbling, like starting slow, right? It's easy to get yourself into problems. You don't need to look for problems in real estate or any new venture you're getting into. So try to start with something that's more simple, that's not going to create a lot of work, even if it's just really, if it's just turnkey. I mean, even turnkey is a great investment. If you look at a 5% plus cap, anything 5% plus cap rate, it's going to be a great investment. You can argue even lower, but it's going to be a great investment comparative to stocks. Certainly bonds. Don't buy any bonds. Maybe not cryptocurrency, of course, but that's separate. You shouldn't be putting all your money in that anyways, because that's just a different market that it's great, but it's different. So I recommend starting slow and then just getting those three things, because then pretty much everything's taken care of and you have somebody to blame for everything, right? You got to understand that you being an amateur, it doesn't matter if you're an amateur or professional, you need accountability. And if you're the only one accountable, you're going to have a bad time. It's going to be pretty rough, especially if you don't know what you're doing, because it's going to be a lot of learning curves. So you need that accountability from those three positions when you're starting, because truthfully, real estate is supposed to take a long time to build up. Well, like Ty Lopez, I met with Ty Lopez like a year and a half ago. One of the things he was saying to me out there is like I love what you're doing. Like, what you're doing in real estate is great. The difficulty with real estate is building up a big revenue stream. And it's true. Like, you can have 9 figures in holdings and still not bring in 8 figures a year in real estate. Like, you should if you're in good markets. But truthfully, most people who have, say, in Toronto, if you have $100 million in condos and apartments and things like that, you're not even bringing in $10 million a year, right? So it takes a ton to bring in that sort of revenue. So it's a longer game when you're trying to invest for your future. If your goal is to own 5 or 10 properties and do that, I think those are the 3 key factors that you need: a really good agent, a good property management company, and a good contractor / inspector. And then pretty much all your problems. I mean, you got the broker, the bank, depends on your relationship there as well too, right? That's obviously very important. But in terms of your hands-on team outside of financing, if you have those, you've covered yourself in those angles.
Yeah, it's a good point on the income and the revenue side, because I mean, I think a lot of people are getting attracted to real estate these days and finding it more of a sexy investment than it ever has been. I'm finding myself in a lot of conversations with people who want to get started in real estate and they want to make the big money right away. They want the cash flow. They have the dream of living off of their cash flow only to kind of finance their lifestyle. I used to think that way when I was 21, 22 as well. I was like, if you could just buy 5 properties that cash flow $1,000 a month, you're making $5,000 a month. You know what I mean? It sounds great in theory, but now you're managing 5 real properties that have some pretty big expenses that make $5,000 a month look very small. So I think the big money in real estate is kind of like a forced savings account, building equity. Like, I was equity rich, cash flow poor for a long time because all of my money was tied up in these properties. Even though I was pulling out equity when I could, it wasn't the cash flow that was giving me money. It was the appreciation, the leverage depreciation, and the mortgage pay down that was just banked away for later that you tap into to kind of expand your portfolio. But 100%. Real estate is so powerful, I think, because of that leverage, because there's so much borrowed money involved. And if, like, in my opinion, if I were using all of my cash to buy real estate, with no debt, I would rather invest in the stock market just because the returns would be that much lower. And I would rather have no headaches, no liability, and just invest in stocks. But why I like real estate better is because you can leverage like 4 or 5 to 1 and use the bank's money at cheap rates and control 100% of the asset.
Correct.
So,
Yeah. You know, to be honest, like, and the leverage factor does play a huge thing because you can't leverage in stocks, and that's because it's too risky. The bank's not going to let you do that. I mean, to a certain degree, if you have a lot of money in there, they're going to let you leverage against it. But it's still much more dangerous. And last thing you want to get is a margin call with a major bank, right? So, the stocks are also tertiary wealth. Like, well, the things I recommend people invest in is obviously stocks because the bank likes them, but you know, cash building life insurance policies can offer decent returns as well too, and hedge. But you're right, the leverage effect is everything. Look, most assets actually, people don't realize this, rise at the rate of inflation or monetary policy increase. So real estate, with the exception of the past, since 2008, when we've been printing a lot more money, has risen at the rate of inflation throughout the past 150 years. And that's what's made it a wealth preserver. And as we've allowed people to leverage, like in the 50s or 40s, you hear your grandma be like, I bought my home for $2,500, you know, and we, you know, walked uphill to my house. I mean, you know, so but once the leverage started getting in there, that's when, okay, if you put 20% down on a property and it goes up 3% a year, it didn't go 3%, you know, went up 5 times that amount, went up 15%. So that's where you really get that leverage factor over time. And 15% compounded annually is crazy. Now you turn that into a rental property, like you said. I treat them. Capital appreciation is the third thing we look for. I'm not banking on capital appreciation. I'm banking on cash flow and equity paid out. And like you had said, the way it works in Canada, or where most of the developed world, is when you refinance that debt, you don't pay taxes on debt. So refinancing is a very powerful tool. If you have 5 properties and you're paying up $5,000 in equity a month, well, that's $60,000 a year. In 3 years, that's $180,000. Well, you can now refinance that out tax-free and then just buy more homes or use it for living expenses, or, you know, a mix of the both. You know, maybe go to Vegas. No. But you could do whatever from there, and because it's debt, and leveraging debt is a powerful tool. But you know, that's why it's been a very effective tool for everybody, the middle class, to create wealth and large scale holders.
yeah, I want to reiterate that point on borrowing against your investments, because that's what wealthy people have been doing for a long time. And a lot of people don't quite understand that. They think that you have to kind of cash out or sell your investments to get your money to go buy what you want now. But you can leverage those investments by borrowing against them tax-free and taking a loan or a line of credit at a low interest rate, and use that to expand your portfolio or to fund your lifestyle without selling the assets. And it's like a massive shift for a lot of people who think kind of the old school way. And especially right now when interest rates are so low, where you can finance things and get debt secured to your real estate or your stock portfolio below 3% in Canada. Like, and someone was just typing in the question box there about stocks, like, isn't a margin account using leverage? And yes, it is. But you touched on the margin call, and that's why I like real estate, because like if you borrow the maximum on your stock portfolio, which is in many cases is 70% loan to value, and your portfolio goes below that, you're in a margin call, and you have to make up the losses. You have to add money to your account or sell some of your positions. Whereas in real estate, if we go through a little correction and property prices go down, the bank's not going to call you for a margin call on your home and say that it's gone down and 80% of it is now, you know, needs to be topped up. It doesn't work like that in real estate. So it's a much safer asset to get loans on. And you also touched on those cash insurance those life insurance like cash policies. You can borrow against those as well at super low interest rates. It takes, but the downside to those, in my opinion, because I used to work in the insurance industry, and that changed in 2017. Those life insurance policies became less attractive in Canada post 2017, and now they're not as advantageous for borrowing against them. They just take a lot of time to build and to compound. But once you have a significant life insurance policy, you can just keep on borrowing against it, and the interest gets added to what you owe, and it's all paid off at death tax-free.
Yeah, you're right about that. And the reason was good too. I mean, a lot of small businesses and even medium businesses were actually taking advantage and too much on the life insurance. Like they would get out policies that they could never sustain in their business, and there was no real cap. So they had to own that in because people would take out, $30 million policies, borrow against them, and their business is worth $2 million. I mean, that creates a big problem if they're not spending their money properly. But at the same time, it's another form of diversification. It's something that the bank likes. And like you said, it actually becomes a double asset, especially when it builds up over time. Because if you especially with younger generation, it's like if you get a $250,000 policy for $250 a month, a cash building policy that a term 10 or a term 20 that's going to pay out in 20 years. You run the math on what you're paying for it. There's a lot worse investments you can make. It also forces you to put money somewhere else and creates that little safety net as well too in case something inevitable, obvious, or something terrible were to happen, I should say, right? So
Yeah. No, it is good to have like multiple investments, multiple income streams, just to be safe, diversified, and not all in on one thing. Totally agree. I want to shift a little bit. Like, I love talking about the higher level get rich stuff. But I also, like, in my personal business, I've been coaching for a couple of years, and I help people kind of in the intermediate stage that have some wealth and want to grow it and get multiple properties and get better financial habits and just make better financial decisions. But I'm shifting towards the segment of the population that needs help before that. They're not even investors yet. They might just be working a job and they don't have good financial habits. They don't have the financial education. They don't have access to what they should be doing yet. And they need a lot of help to just understand the credit system, income and expenses, basic cash flow, and then just introductory investments. And then taking that as far as you want to go. So I'm going to be building out a company that can start from that scratch level and focus on that until getting to the intermediate and advanced levels. So on that note, for people that are like trying to build a side hustle or trying to like shift from an employee to self-employed to business owner, it's a pretty big transition. It's not easy. It's probably been a while since you've gone through that transition because now you've got a lot of employees and you manage different levels of management. But what's your advice for people that really want to like kind of go to that initial stage of going to business owner?
yeah, I mean, you're talking about people who are currently employed and then looking to diverge from there, or people just looking to invest.
No, not to invest, because I think like the biggest problem before you even get to investing is people need to increase their income. They're just not bringing in enough. Investing in like the S&P 500 index fund is not going to solve your problem when you're not making enough money. You need to increase your income. You need to increase your skills, and you need to be building businesses or doing something to increase at least your active income. So any tips on like increasing active income as like a first step type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many side hustles that you can do, outside of work if they're doing the work and they want to stay there, obviously, and keep employed. You can do wholesaling. I've never gotten into wholesaling, but wholesaling can be a great, effective way. Honestly, working with people who are doing it, you can even approach some real estate investors and see if there's anything on the side that they need. It sounds great. I don't want to say, hey, you have to work 100 hours a week, because if you have a 40-hour job, and that's going to be your focus. You don't want to just stop that with no other income to support you, right? But the best way to do it is, I'd say, try to get paid for what you're learning. You know what I mean? And I know that's more difficult. I would first off say just start learning, because that's gonna do it. I mean, like, I started a bunch of companies once I started learning. I read 3-4 hours a day, articles, books. That's really the key, in my opinion, and that's what gives me the confidence to do anything. But it's not my only business. So I've got landscaping, I've got eFresh, I've got Inside Fighting is a new podcast that started up. I've got an agency down here. We've got, the real estate holdings, and in the real estate developments, we've got 3 separate companies, right? We've got the construction company, we've got the property management, and then we have the acquisitions team. So, really reading and learning. I know as weird as that sounds, because that's not going to pay you, but start learning first, because once you learn, you can understand what you want to do. You can take a course. You can spend $200 on a course and learn how to build out a drop shipping Shopify site yourself for free, just after learning the course. Or you can pay $1,000 and have somebody else set up a drop shipping account for you. But you can't do any of that without knowledge. You can't do anything without research, right? So before I even bought a home, like I was bartending when I first bought my first property, right? But I learned, I was researching and reading for a couple of years prior to even doing that. Like, I can, probably could have escalated that a bit, but I think honestly, as weird as it sounds, it's not really a direct answer to that question. It's really learning first, because then you're going to know. I didn't want to get into wholesaling, but I know a lot of people have done very well on wholesaling. So read about wholesaling. If you like that, then go do wholesaling, right? So, I did it the old school way with my landscaping company, and even eFresh Meals. I was handing out door hangers. I was going door to door on what I would do. Obviously, I didn't get paid for that, but I was like, yeah, I'm going to start this and I'm going to go door to door hangers. I'm going to listen to an audiobook at the same time, because then I know I'm increasing my knowledge while I'm increasing my business. And so that to me gave me a really good feel. And I'm exercising, so it was a trifecta. So like to me, that was very helpful. And all of my companies have been lean startup. Even Fit Developments was lean startup. We did, like, my landscaping company was $3,500 to start. eFresh Meals, I think, was $5,000 when we initially started. And then on the real estate, initially when we started, I got four buddies to put in $2,500 each, and we bought our first property, and then we went from there. And again, a little different when you're trying. I actively wanted to start companies and all of these things, so it's a different flow. But I say, if you start learning, ideas are just going to come to you. If you start reading nonfiction books, Rich Dad Poor Dads, and getting in there, you're going to think of so many ideas. He gives out 3, because it's not about trying to make, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, you do need money to do stuff, right? But if you know what you're doing, if you're really well researched, you can find lenders, or you can get people together and be like, hey, listen, here's a plan. I wrote a pitch deck on this property. This is going to be a great property. I will do all of the work, but I need to raise $20,000 to do it. Will you guys do this? I will give you 50% of it, and here's the plan. And if they say no, go to somebody else. If they say no, go to somebody else, right? But if you're going to too many people, it's probably because you don't know enough, right? Like, or you're not going to investors or somebody who's actually interested in it. So I think knowledge is the key to all of that. Because me personally, I feel like everything I've done, even in the past few years, I feel like if you took it all away from me, I could do it all again in 6 months. And it's part of that's confidence, but part of that is understanding, being through that and researching that kind of gets you there. So I would start learning first. Force yourself at least an hour of an audiobook a day, which anybody can do, because you can do it while you're driving, you can do it while you're working out, you can do it in the morning when you're waking up, right? You can do it while you're drinking coffee, whatever. And that's going to start spurring ideas. Read things like, the lean startup. The lean startup teaches you how to start businesses for, under $100. Like, and that's really what's going to do it. Because the best side hustle is going to either be something that you want to do where somebody's going to pay you. So if you're like, hey, I'll be a real estate, you're a real estate investor, I'll work for you for like minimum wage. I just want to learn. Yeah. And if you can't get something like there, okay, well then learn on your own and find something that's cheap to start that you can go pursue that way. Because you only have so many hours in a day, really. And if you're already working 40 hours, and if you don't have a job, then just get a job. If the income is not having a job, then start getting a job and learn from there. I know that didn't exactly answer it, but that's just how I did. I jumped straight from bartending into my own business and had a lot of difficulties doing that. But I went right into the fire. But I don't necessarily recommend that that's the way to do it either, right?
Yeah,
learning is always first.
You covered a lot there, and I kind of want to take it a few different directions. But like you hit the point there with like education being the key there, and being committed to wanting to learn and ideally getting paid to learn. That's amazing. And trying to develop a high income skill that the market demands, and focusing your energies on helping people and what you can deliver to people as opposed to what job pays me the most. Focus on sort of a problem and solving that problem for people. And the better you get at solving that is the more money that's going to come in return. But I mean, you also touched on a few different avenues of like, if this doesn't work, try that. If that doesn't work, try that. Now that's getting into persistence. Like, not everybody has that persistence. I mean, that's beyond education. So like, what are the most important skills or assets or character traits that separate the people who win from the people who give up or the people who lose or quit early?
The number one trait: perseverance. 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 You're not going to meet a professional athlete, an entertainer, a business leader who has not failed more than everybody else who didn't get to that point. That's just a fact. In any topic, I bet you Einstein failed more in coming up with his theories than the people that you haven't heard about that were around in his generation, right? Perseverance is 110% everything. And you'll find so often like that people persevere up until like just before it's too late, or when they're gonna win. My hardest hardship was really just almost 3 years ago, about 2.5-3 years ago, and I had a very big hardship where I could have packed it in, like for sure. Anybody else would have packed it in. 99.999% of people, truthfully, would have packed it into my situation, and I didn't, and that's what led to the success. But I had other areas before that where it was the same thing. You've always got to push past that next step. It's almost like you continually feel like you're gambling. And that every professional athlete will tell you the same thing, and so will artists, so will entertainers. That doesn't mean make foolish moves, right? But it means you need to learn from your mistakes and persevere. Success is here to here to here to here to here, like Lorenzo, the great Lorenzo Fertitta said. It's not here to here. And most people think success is here to here. They see somebody get rich, and they're like, oh my God, how do they do it? They got lucky. But it takes a lifetime of work to become an overnight success. And you're not going to get anywhere without failing. And the reality is like when you stop having problems, you stop growing. And business is nothing but problem solving. You're going to have problems all day long. And that's what you have to realize, that your job is to problem solve. Your job is nothing else when you're running businesses but to problem solve. If you can problem solve, then great. If you don't have an issue with that, then great. I actually get excited sometimes for problems now, just because we understand that you're hitting a new level when that happens. And if you change your approach to what problems are, because most people do this, they get a problem and they go, oh, I'm going to call my mom, or I'm going to call Shelly. I don't know why Shelly, I don't even know Shelly, but you know what I mean? You're going to call anybody and they're going to start venting. The first thing you're going to do is vent. People come with problems with me. It's like, okay, you give a problem to me, and my team knows this too, and this is why it's so great too. We have a bunch of problem solvers. It's like they're coming to me with solutions. I hear about the problem when the solution is there. And the only time it gets brought to me is if it's really a problem and it's like, hey, do you think this works? So what do we do from here? And it's like, okay, then we can talk it out. But everything is problem solving. Every division. All of my companies have failed and succeeded based on the people I have around me and their ability to problem solve. If they're not able to problem solve, or they get flustered or oh, we can't do this, or that oh, this is not going to work, and you have that mentality, well, then it's not going to work. The only solution is a solution. That's it. And so if you understand that in every problem that you have, you're going to be very successful. If you don't understand that, you're not going to be very successful.
Yeah, that's a good answer, man. Perseverance is what it all comes down to, and just not giving up and keep on trying. There's been a couple of comments about your audio quality not being perfect. I don't know if it's...
Should I go somewhere else? Is it the wind?
Might be the connection between your earphones and the phone, or your hand is covering the mic. I don't know, but...
Oh, you know what? I don't know. Can you guys hear me now? And Sohail, it's a lean startup. I think they have the $100 startup is a really good book as well too. Those are both.
Now going back to like sort of the beginner who's kind of transitioning, maybe from like self-employed to business owner, where the self-employed person is the business, and without them they have nothing. You just you own a job rather than an actual business. When you're scaling from that to owning a business, like what are the first, maybe this is more situational for you, who were the first people that you hired? What were the first positions that you outsourced, or tasks that you outsourced, so that you could focus on what's more important in scaling?
Yeah, you know what's funny? I always hired a little prematurely in most situations. I had a property manager, full-time property manager by my 5th property, because I was tired of dealing with tenants, and I was like, I need somebody designated towards this. So that was, I've always hired really early. Ryan Maloney, our president, actually, he was one of the first big hires about 4 years ago now, a little over 4 years ago. And that was huge, because he came from a recruiting background. He worked at Real Estate Canada, so we needed to hire. So he's obviously very good at hiring from that. Now, he's obviously the president now, and at the time, there wasn't an executive team. I have an executive team now. At the time, it was just like, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm hiring who I think can help me problem solve, really, right? So my first initial hire was trades. I dealt with the trades directly. Then I got a project manager. I wound up getting 2, because one of the project managers, I won't name, didn't know what he was doing. So I got another project manager to help that one that I was trying to help out. And then initially I hired contractors along with our property manager. But we don't have contractors under payroll anymore. We subcontract everything out, and we're just a management team. So we have site supervisors, project managers. But the first real hire was the property manager around the same time as I brought on Ryan, who was he was recruitment, but he was kind of everything I needed. When you're first hiring people, you need people that can do multiple jobs. You're not big enough where you can just, okay, you do this one job. You're not bringing in enough revenue. You're broke. You just started. You hired someone.
That's such a
now
good
you're
point.
broke again because you hired them. So they've got to be able to problem solve and be good at a different different areas, right? And Ryan was very diverse. Ryan and I have similar personalities. So after Ryan, we began hiring more analytical people and data-driven people as well too, because both of him, he's a very good communicator as well too. So when you're really building out a team, the key is making sure that the personalities work together and that you're covering all ends, right? Like if I see someone who's an amazing communicator and creative and everything like that, they may not be the most analytical person, so that you got to even that out on the other side when you go. But you're not gonna be able to do that all at once. So your first hire has got to be somebody like, hey, so I've got a problem managing these sites, right? But I also might need you to show some properties. I also might need you to like make some calls. I also might need you to do this. They got to be kind of a little bit of a jack of all trades and really just down. Not like, oh, well, that's not my job. I don't do it unless that's my job. Because you're not going to have enough to fill their plate. And if you really want somebody full time, that's what you need. That's what you need, that commitment. So it's like, I need you to be down for whatever right now. And then from there, as you grow, you can really section things off, which you absolutely need to do. As you grow larger, you need to make sure that, okay, this is your position and this is what you handle. When we first hired our property manager's doing everything. Now our property manager, our lead property manager, she's incredible. She's paralegal as well too, and she manages the other ones as well too. And she's still a jack of all trades. She'll still get in there and do whatever she needs to do. She's, you know, that's just the type of person she is. But you need that leader in order to build out those other ones, and they have to be willing to, I hate saying step out of bounds, but just be a real team player and grow that, because whenever you're growing any new division or company, that's really what you need. You need somebody who's going to be down for whatever and not complain and just problem solve whatever the problem is at the current time.
That's a huge takeaway, man, is that your first employee, first hiring should be someone who can do multiple jobs and handle multiple things. And I guess to find that person, they have to really understand the mission that you're trying to get to with your company and vibe well on a personal basis, so that you can have that kind of relationship that they can handle multiple problems and not just have a unique job position right off the bat.
100%. Yeah,
huge.
100%. Yeah. That's what it is. And you're going to be figuring it out as you go. You can read all the books in the world, but you need practical education as well, too. You got to put it to practice, right? So everything I've learned on that, like I've had the idea there, right? And that's why I say perseverance always comes back into play, because whenever you have a goal, never change the plan, never change the goal. You can change the plan to get to the goal, but don't change the goal. Keep the goal there. And if this doesn't work, pivot, do something else. This doesn't work, pivot, do something else, right? You see this in every single topic, and it's funny because people will do one thing and then not correlate it to the others. But like I say this often, if you want to get good at basketball, you better take some jump shots. If you want to, sprint fast, you better start sprinting. If you want to get good at batting, you better go to the batting cages. If you want to get good at science, you better take science. If you want to get good at math, you better take math. If you want to get good at business, you better study business. And it's all the same, right? So education is very important, but you have to persevere past these hard spots. And I think the only issue I have with school, which I have an unfair advantage because I, didn't really graduate high school. I got a GED. But my unfair advantage there is that I was always okay with failure. My mom was very supportive when I was growing up, being like, you can do whatever. And that's always very helpful, for sure, just in shaping your mind, saying you want to do something. Oh, you can do it. That's very encouraging, very helpful. If anybody has kids, never tell them they can't do something unless it's illegal. And that's, I think, an important drive to have in yourself. But you are going to make mistakes. You are going to fail. You fail your way to the top. You don't succeed your way to the top. You fail your way to the top, right? And that's what people do. That's why you see when somebody wins an NBA championship, they start crying. You know what I mean? I love comparing things to sports because everybody loves sports. I love sports, and that's where you can take a lot away from. Like, you see these guys, they're crying because they know how hard it was to get there. You see the same, I'm sure, when people take their company public for the first time and it goes up. They're like, oh my God, I bet you if you could film them at home, they're probably crying. And it's tears of joy because they understood the hardship that they had to go through to get there, right? And that's the that's the biggest thing I can say.
Yeah, I love that, man. I like that a lot. Now, on the topic of goals, like what was the goal for you? Like what's all the money for, all the businesses, the prestige? Like what was always, how much is enough? Or like what is it? Is it just the game for you in business? Or was there always some type of stage to get to before enough is enough?
Yeah, one thing it's a great question, because a lot of people have that, like, I just want to retire, I want to sit on a beach. I get bored on a beach, and it's not about that. And I truthfully don't care about money, and I think that's what makes it a little bit different. Obviously, you have to make money to support people, but to me, it's actually finding out about what's going on in the world. I know, I actually had the opportunity to meet Trump a few months ago, and a lot of people chirped me for that. And I'm not political, I'm not Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. my wife and I are looking to actually go to a dinner event with the Clintons in November, and we're trying to get 10 to 15 minutes to speak with them as well too. And that is obviously that's costing money. That's not making me any money. But my true reason for doing things, I want to figure out what's going on in this world. As you know, weird as that may seem, and I know that the vehicle to get there, it is what it is. We're in a capitalist society, and you need to have money to do some of these things. So my two driving factors is obviously I grew up in entertainment. I've made a ton of money, and then I went bankrupt. So my first thing was a lack of financial education. And I want to be able to teach that to people, especially entertainers and athletes who are in a situation like me. They made a lot of money, but they never learned financial education, so they went broke. So that's why I put out Things for Free. I'm not selling courses. Although I am a huge advocate for coaching. I don't personally do it, but I'm a huge advocate for coaching people getting in at the beginning because it really speeds up their learning curve. But for me personally, like this is why I'm doing things like, with like, Little Baby or Tory Lanez, these different entertainers, and Antonio Brown, these guys who have these massive followings of people who really look up to them. And it's like, okay, well, this I didn't know this, so hopefully this can help and educate them. And so that's one thing, because I remember how that felt, man. And there's nothing worse than being, a C or D list celebrity, which I was. I was never super famous, but in my world, people were like, oh, you're an actor, you're successful, and then they see you serving tables because you went bankrupt. It's a big, it was hard for me for a little bit. No pity story, everybody's got one, but it wasn't easy to deal with that. And so now my focus is trying to teach people, hey, there is a different way to do things, and financially educate yourself. And the real big thing for me is trying to figure out how this world works. And the vehicle to do that is through businesses for me, but I want to figure out how this world ticks and how I can help, honestly. Like, for me, it's like, what's actually going to get you excited in the morning? You can only eat so much steak. Like, I could set up right now and stop and be like, okay, I'll go live on a beach. But that's not exciting to me, and I'm not doing things for people. And you've got to have a reason to do something. And that's kind of my take on it.
That's pretty sick, man. Your audio's going in and out again, but
I'm gonna go where there's less wind.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing, as I see you doing these videos with these celebrities and shit. It's cool as shit. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you've got that segment of people that you've kind of been through, where you kind of were at the pinnacle of success for where you were, and then to drop down to nothing and know what it feels like and try and help these people. Like, athletes are kind of notorious for that. They've done it. It's happened many times where they get super rich and then they go super broke. It happens to lottery winners as well. Like, they just don't have the education. That's what it comes down to, is the education.
There's a big difference between lottery winners and athletes. And the thing is, this is why I like athletes too. And I mentor some athletes off camera that, for free as well too, just because they don't need my money. I don't need theirs. And I genuinely get along with them and have so much respect because, I would have loved to have been an athlete. I'm just not built like that. And the reality is, if you've been successful in anything like that, you can be successful in everything. And that includes business. And that's something that I really like about athletes. It's like, yo, you were the top. If you apply the same energy into business, you're going to dominate that world. And that's what you see. And it all is education. There's another book called Family Wealth as well, too, that talks about why most families wind up losing all of their wealth within 3 generations, right? The first is the creator. The second is the managers. The third is the squanderers, if you will, right? And it doesn't matter how much you have at that point. It's just, it winds up becoming an education thing. And that's all it is. And athletes and entertainers are the only commodity that can have a bad team around them and still be successful. So if you're a business owner and you have a shitty team, you're not going to have a business, right? Whereas if you're an entertainer or an athlete and you have a shitty team, you can still survive as long as your career's there. But as soon as your career's over, your shitty team's a shitty team. And now you got to focus like you're a business. You're no longer the commodity once that career's over. And so that's something that's very hard for people to understand and get. And the ones that really get successful and do it differently are the ones that actually build a really good team around them and are able to take things to another level.
Yep, the team building thing is absolutely massive, man. Somebody was asking if this would be saved, and yes, this will be saved and put it on my profile, and it can be downloaded. Before we go to questions from people who want to ask, if anyone has a question, feel free to drop it in there. But what do you think the best thing that money can buy is?
Not happiness. A lot of people think that, but truthfully, even if you had your financial woes solved, and I'm telling you as someone who had it as a kid and then lost it, money doesn't buy you happiness. It can buy you freedom, and it can buy you choices, in a sense, right? It's the choices. It's really options. That's probably the best way to summarize it. It's options. Can't buy you
Yeah.
happiness. It's options, because you'll get euphoric for a bit, right? So like to say that, but you might get, okay, I have a sale, and you like maybe this all the time in successful people, athletes, like I said, anything like that is it's very short lived. Money doesn't buy you happiness; it buys you choices and options. That's the truth.
Totally agree with that, man. I've said that multiple times. Freedom, options, choices, whatever you want to put it. It's just the ability to do what you want, type of thing. It's like it's not the fact that you can go into a Lamborghini store and buy a Lamborghini. It's not the Lamborghini. It's the fact that you can do it, and you probably, I mean, won't do it in many cases just because you know that, like, it's only going to be a short-term burst of happiness. It doesn't last that long. But just kind of having those options to do whatever you want, to travel, to take care of other people, to provide for family, friends, and not run out. It's like taking the fears away and all of the worries that come along with money, trading your time forever just for this piece of paper that just constantly needs to be replenished. It's like escaping that system is the best thing, that I think, like, the best stage of money. Beyond that, it just becomes like nicer this, nicer that, more frequent this, more frequent that. But I don't think, and nothing will beat the stage of not having to worry or work for money anymore. It's just the option of
You know
not
what it
doing
is too, and it's a lot of diminishing returns as well too. Like, you drive a nice car, and you have that, and it's very nice, and you feel good about it. But it would actually hurt you more if you had to take a step back than somebody going into that car for the next time, right? So if you take a private flight, for instance, the first time you go, it's super cool. Second time, it's pretty cool. Third time, it becomes normal. And then you bring other people. The biggest joy I get from things like that is actually taking people on experiences that they've not done before, right? So if I can get an experience, I get more excited about other people's experience for the first time doing something that I've done before than I do myself. So I get more joy seeing that from other people than I do myself at this point. And that I've not done everything, but at the same time, that's genuinely how I feel, and it is the law of diminishing returns. So, everything in life is about convenience as well too. That's why we get, like, 15 years ago, you would go out without your phone; it wouldn't really matter. You know what I mean? Now you can't leave without your phone because it's a convenience thing, and you get used to that. So, I mean, a big part of that is like I said, the law of diminishing returns. That's why money, it can't buy you happiness, because then you're just going to get used to it. You might have a big house, but then you're used to it. So what next? Like, what are you really doing? And I think that is a big problem with people who are so focused on money, and that's their main driving factor. My driving factor isn't money, so it makes it easier for me to make decisions that are about money, because it's not about money. It's about, the company, but then my goals on trying to figure out what's next. What like I said, what is going on in this world? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that plays a big role in the choices that I make.
Interesting perspective, man. Yeah, I like that. Well, nobody's jumping in to do the questions, so I've got two to wrap it up. You kind of touched on one of the most important things that you need, but the question is, like, what were the most important skills or assets that you had that have gotten you to where you are today? And are those the same skills or talents that are going to get you to the next level that you want to get to? Or do you have to pivot?
You said the two?
All right, well, however many.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So perseverance. Like I said, perseverance will get you anywhere, but you can't be dumb perseverance. You can't make the same mistakes over and over and over again. You really got to learn from your mistakes. It sounds cliche, but that's it. But perseverance is going to get you through anything. You got to persevere through everything. We're persevering right now on refinances. We're persevering on city inspectors, finishing up some permits. Like, it's all about perseverance and education on that side. Education is the second one I'll give in there. You gotta put in the time. If you want to be a good investor, you want to be good at business, you gotta put in that work. You gotta read. And so if you don't have the networks, like, for years I was just like a hermit in my mom's basement, and on the way to work I would listen to audiobooks. And, you know, I do more reading now than I did even back then. But I would, you know, educate myself daily. It's like going to the batting cages daily, and that's going to get you better. With time, you're going to get better and better and better, and then you're going to become an expert. And it's weird because you have a shift. It's the context that you're trying to change. It's not like I don't remember where I got information from on books, but if you ask me a question, I'm going to answer, and I know it came from books or practical experience, right? Yeah. So that's the biggest thing. It's like my answers are shaped from my environment, and I don't have access to Elon Musk yet, but I don't have access to some of these guys, right? And if you don't have that, most people don't. Okay, cool. So who are my friends? My friends are my audiobooks. I'm going to read a biography on Robert Iger, you know, former CEO of Disney. I'm going to read on Elon Musk. I'm going to read about Jeff Bezos. Even if I don't agree with everything they do, like I said, I meet with different political leaders. We just met with Trump. I want to meet with the Clintons. But it's not, because I'll agree on certain points with everybody, right? Like, do you have common ground? Unless somebody's truly evil, you're going to have some common ground that you can agree on, right? So I think, you know, continually trying to educate yourself and persevere are two of the biggest qualities that you can possibly have. Because like they say, don't repeat the same mistake twice, right? But people actually do that all the time. And so you got the perseverance to make that mistake once, then you need the education to not do it again.
Bang.
So those are the two most important factors, I would say.
That's sick, man. Yeah, if you do have the right combination of those two things, then it's just a matter of time, really, because you just won't give up, and you'll just get more educated, and you won't give up, and you'll get more educated, and you just keep going, and eventually you will hit success. So yeah, that's a great answer. Someone's saying, how do you build a team in a remote area like Northern Ontario? Like, I've experienced that too, because I mean, I built my real estate business in the bigger cities around the GTA, where it's very easy to find people to, you know, hire and do business for you. You can use like your own referral network, and you can use Kijiji and like simple things like that. And then when I went up to like Hanover, a town called Hanover, and I'm looking for the same type of people that I would find very easily, and I can't find anyone on Kijiji. I can't find anyone on Google. So I had to source from people in the real estate business. The realtor was my center person for referrals. And then I would leverage that to meet more people and then ask them for a property manager. And eventually, a couple layers later, I would find a property manager as opposed to just going on Kijiji for a simple search. Do you have any other strategies to find somebody in remote areas?
Yeah, like I said, so we do it a little differently because we're in-house and we hire like full-time property management internally up in the north. But yeah, like watch my last video on my page I just posted today, and it gives you the 3 things in any city that you would need. Because I hear that all the time. Well, how do you invest so far away? Well, listen, if you want to go to your house every single week and cut the lawn, you're probably not going to be able to do that. But if you don't want to handle that stuff, then like I said, a really good real estate agent, right? And you can Google them, take your time with them, or maybe ask somebody local for a referral. Like, who would you recommend in the city, right? If you know agents, because everybody knows a real estate agent. And the second thing is a good property management company in that city, right? So you can Google these, and they're going to come up in every city. I know because I've done it in Ontario as well too, right? So obviously Googling property managers in that city, and then vetting those properly, like I said earlier. And the third is a good inspector and contractor, and you have those in every single city. Unless you're going to a town with like 300, 400 people, they're going to have that in every single city, and that's definitely the way to go about it without having to take on that overhead in-house and then have experts. That's the way I would do it. That's exactly what I would do if I wasn't hiring internally. And then you could go anywhere. You could do it in the States. If you know how to buy in the States and you're in Canada, those 3 things could take you anywhere in the world. Those are the 3 people you need in that city, and you're going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. For the real estate business, that totally applies. And I guess the takeaway is like, if you're looking for a certain specific somebody to fill a role, there might be a low amount of people in that role in that city, but you kind of have to expand outside of the box to think, who would know that type of person? What other industries can I start to explore to just build my network and get to know them first before asking referrals? Like, the key is just networking and building relationships with people genuinely, and then asking for referrals when you do have a network in that smaller city. Someone else is asking about investing during the stock market downturn. What are you putting your money in if we have a downturn? Like, yeah, so I know you're big into crypto and stocks and real estate. If we had a crash, I mean, this is a stock market downturn. So I guess, where are you putting your money in the stock market then?
Yeah, I mean, downturn's relative, because a year ago it was still, we're up. But the reality is, it's like I said, I hate investing on tomorrow and what's going in. I don't day trade. If you're trying to get wealthy, you're an accumulator. You're not a trader. So you're trying to invest in things that you know are going to do well. So the areas I invest in, like space right now, is a $300 billion industry. I mean, it's very well known that this is going to triple in the next decade, and that's conservative. So let me give you something on space, because we haven't talked about that yet. It's predicted to go from a $300 billion to 1.2 to 1.4 trillion dollar industry in the next 10 years. Now, let me tell you why that's super conservative and not actually the case, because it's already a regulated market. So unlike cryptocurrencies, when it's 300 and then it goes to a trillion, once you get to a trillion, this becomes an investable asset class for large institutions and sovereign wealth funds. So what's ultimately going to happen is we're going to continue to invest. Right now, the government and the wealthiest people in the world are investing in this new idea of space being a commercialized, industry, which it absolutely will be. So they already know, like, the minimum this is going to go is it's going to triple over the next decade. So I am buying some ETFs in space just because I want exposure to the market in general. Some of the cool companies like SpaceX are still private, so you can't buy into those. But it's inevitable. This is like, you're investing in companies in space right now. You're investing in the new Teslas. You're investing in, people who build satellites. You've got I think a hotel in mid 2020 is expected. The first hotel is going to be invested there, and they're not going to stop that. And this is an eventual $10 trillion plus market, absolutely, and probably larger, because space is infinite, right? So that's one area where it's like, listen, it doesn't care about today, tomorrow, whatever. And that's why I say ETFs or something like that, because a lot of the companies are either relatively new, not making a lot, or they're just not big enough yet, right? So if you got exposure to that, I would put a portion there and just don't worry about it. Just understand that, hey, listen, you wish you would have gotten into Amazon and Tesla like that 10, 20 years ago. Well, here's your opportunity to do it in an asset which is already sanctioned and regulated. It's not like cryptos, even though I'm big on cryptos, it is regulated already. So it's not hard for sovereign wealth funds and other institutions to jump onto this. And that $1 trillion mark is very important, because that's when a lot of big money starts getting into things. So that's one. The other one is commodity metals. So iron, nickel, copper, even silver, even gold, even all those, right? Like, the reality is we've been in a depressed cycle for decades, and we have this massive push for renewables in every single country in the world. They're all going that way. So we know that renewables is going to grow, and we don't actually have enough supply of these commodity metals to support that. So, for instance, I'd said this before on my page, but Tesla thinks by the end of the decade they're going to need 1.5 million tons of nickel a year. That's their demand personally for their vehicles. Well, and their solar as well. There's only 2.5 million tons of nickel mined a year, so they're going to need over 50% of that. And in order to build a new mine, you've got to raise billions of dollars to build a new copper mine, right? It's not cheap, and nobody's been doing that. So the ores have gone down, and the demand is going up. So there's a lot of good, and I would invest in the larger ones too that are consistent with their dividends for sure, but commodity metal stocks that I think in the long term are going to do very well, because that market's got to grow. It's inevitable it's got to grow. You know what I mean? Your phones need it, solar needs it, renewable needs it. That's where it is, commodity metals. We're going to need them more than ever. So commodity metals, renewables, and space, and don't worry about the market today, tomorrow. Maybe it'll drop 30%. Okay, cool, then buy more. At least you got a discount. Listen, it's the same thing with real estate. Paralysis by analysis. I've got buddies who have been looking at investing for 3 to 4 years. They're like, oh, I'm going to wait for a correction. I'm going to wait for this. I'm going to wait for that. And now the market is doubled. Now the market is tripled, right? And now they're like, oh, they still haven't bought because they haven't done it. I don't worry about what's going on today. I'm an accumulator. And if you're saying my shares are $40 a share and I can buy them right now and tomorrow they're 30, well, thank you for giving them more of a discount. I'm going to buy more of them. And I treat cryptocurrencies like that. I'll try to buy if it's down. I buy if it's flat. I buy if it's up. And I don't worry about the day-to-day. Of course, I don't try to buy things that are stupid or on the edge. But a lot of people try to get rich, the wrong way. They're buying pink sheet stocks and things like that are just not going to work. Or they're buying, cryptocurrencies that are, in the low 200s, or, investing in things they don't know about. And really, you have to have a long-term approach to investing. The wealthiest people, the wealthiest investors in the world actually only had a couple right choices. If Warren Buffett never got into insurance, in the insurance game, you probably wouldn't know who Warren Buffett is. And he's an amazing investor, but he made the majority of his returns on a couple different moves. And that's how most investors work. So you got to think, it's much easier to look at a macro perspective and think what's going to be big in 10 years than what's going to do well tomorrow. Nobody can predict the market tomorrow, but everybody wants to. Everybody wants to get rich quick. Or if you just did it slowly over there, you'll get very successful. Because undoubtedly, unless the entire world implodes, I can tell you that we're going to have space hotels. We're eventually going to be, a multi-planetary species, and that could take a very long time. But before that happens, you're going to be at 1 trillion, 3 trillion, 5 trillion, 10 trillion plus market cap. And if you have the opportunity to buy ETFs in a $300 billion market, you know it's going to be 10 trillion plus one day. Well, why wouldn't you start doing that now?
Yeah, man. There's a couple of good industries there for sure. I'm on board with the space industry. I think that's just inevitably going to grow. It has no choice. Metals, I mean, I agree with you. I just find them too boring. I don't invest in the metal space. And from the gold and silver standpoint, I've just had a hard time like getting behind that, especially now with crypto. And what's happened over the past year and a half with inflation and everything with COVID and all that stuff, gold and silver should have skyrocketed, but they didn't. And crypto has. So I think it is stealing a lot of the market cap from those metals. And I mean, I like, when it comes to stocks and businesses, I like the Warren Buffett theory of buying under market or undervalued businesses as opposed to just like buying stocks. You're buying a piece of a business. You have to think of it that way. And when we are in a downturn, you're buying companies that have solid balance sheets with a lot of cash flow and revenue. Like those are safe ways to build compounded growth. On the speculative side, it's nice to kind of have a portion of your portfolio that's speculative, but you hit it so hard. Like I can't even tell you how many questions I get about the home run stocks and cryptos, like the hottest crypto, the hottest stock. It's already way too late. It's already gone up 300%, and now you want to get in. Like maybe for a trader to hold it for a few hours or a couple of days to catch that wave with a stop loss. But as an investor, after it's already gone up 300, 400%, and there's no revenue, like that's just a complete gamble. And a lot of people just look for that gamble though. They feel like they're behind because there's so many people kind of making money in real estate and stocks and showcasing it and getting rich, and they want to just get there very, very quickly. But it's tough to like wrap your head around the fact that you need to kind of start slowly and start the right way, because if you're thinking like the gambler with millions or billions of dollars, your risk is absolutely enormous. And like it's the same level of risk with lots of money, but you just need to get the fundamentals down first and start
100%.
investing safely.
And you said it right. Listen, I know still people my age who probably put more on Bet365 than they do in stocks and other assets, right? Like they're gambling a lot, and that's the same way they treat stocks. And like you said, it's catch up wanting to get rich quick. And listen, it's fun if you want to do that stuff. If you want to put 10% and go, hey, I'm gonna whatever happens, right? Go ahead, do that. But the majority of what you put in should be in those things. So maybe cryptocurrency. I get asked all the time, what do you think of NFTs? What do you think of this cryptocurrency? And I'm like, look, I'm not focused on the smaller cryptocurrencies. I'm focused on the macro, right? Like I said, when it was 200 billion, it's going to be $1 trillion market. I said when it's trillion, it's going to be 2 trillion. And I'm not calling markets. I could be wrong. It could go to zero, but I don't have all my money in cryptocurrencies. I just think that it's going to do very well for a number of reasons we won't go into right now. But I focus on the top ones because at the end of the day, if the top cryptocurrencies fail, everything fails. So nothing else matters. And if you're getting in at a lower valuation, you think it's going to be a 10 trillion or potentially $100 trillion market, like stocks are a $100 trillion market. Okay, well, if we think cryptocurrencies could be there as well too, I think you're okay buying Bitcoin at a $200 billion market cap. If you think one day it could be a 10 trillion or $15 trillion market, I think your returns are still going to be great no matter what. So I think that's, like you said, the big thing. People are trying to look for that, get a quick idea, and nothing's quick. And like I said, it takes a lifetime of work to become an overnight success. And I don't know anybody who's gotten rich overnight outside of lottery winners. And good luck. I've never won a cash for life. So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And like that's what people are seeing on Instagram or social media now is they see the successes, but there's like a decade or more of work behind the scenes that people don't see and sacrificing weekends.
Instagram is a life filter. Instagram is a life filter. And that's why on my stories I try to post a lot about my failures and things like that when I can, because it is a filter. It makes everything look good. If you just look at my Instagram, you're like, oh, this motherfucker doesn't do anything. He just, wins. And, and that's just because you're not, you can't post everything you're doing. People post the pretty side. They got filters on there. You can, do whatever you want. And it's truly a life filter, Instagram. And people need to understand that.
Nice, man. Well, got to wrap it up. I've got multiple offers on a property right now that I got to go through. But this has been an absolute pleasure, man. There's so many topics to cover with you, and we could go for a couple extra hours. So I hope we can do it again. It seems there's a lot of questions that we didn't even get to. So let's do this again. On closing thoughts, man, on a macro scale for a lot of people, what do you think people need to do more of to be successful? Like, what do you want to see more of from people?
Absolutely, man. What is this one? What do you feel is the best way to scale? Also explain. Best way to scale, again, the real underscore King Boy is his education again. Antonio.Chavez, start reading Mofo. Get on our level, son. And yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Whenever you want to do this, let me know. I'm down. I'm here to teach. I do it for free. I do no capping, if you will. Everything I say is 100% honest. That's the one thing you'll find about me, is everything I post is honest. Nothing I do. If I was in debt, I'd tell you I'm in debt. If I'm in lawsuits, I'd tell you I'm in lawsuits. If I own over 100 million in real estate, I'm going to tell you that I own that too. I don't lie about anything, because lying doesn't get you anywhere. You got to be honest in this world, especially in our game. So let me know when you want to meet up again, and we'll do this. I had a lot of fun with it, man. I got a ton of respect for you, Bryan. So let's keep doing this, and I'm happy to get on again.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it. It's very inspiring. Let's talk soon.
All right, brother.
Take care, everyone.
Cheers, guys. Have a good day.
Peace.